This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Welcome to Mom and Dad Are Fighting, Slate's parenting podcast for Thursday, September 7th, the Aunts and Uncles edition. I'm Zach Rosen. I make another podcast. It's called The Best Advice Show, and I am dad to Noah, who just turned 6, and Ami, who's going to be 3 next week. We live in Detroit.
I'm Elizabeth Newcamp. I write the homeschool and family travel blog, Dutch Goose. I'm the mom of 3 littles, Henry, who's 11, Oliver, who's 9, and Teddy, who's 6, and we live in Tokyo, Japan.
I'm Jamilah. I'm a writer, contributor to Slate's Care and Feeding Parenting column, and mom to Naima, who's 10, and we live in Los Angeles.
We're going to start off today by sharing our parenting ups and downs this week. Then I'll be talking with Jake Gyllenhaal, Greta Caruso, and Dan Santat about their new book, The Secret Society of Aunts and Uncles. We get into what it takes to craft a kid's book, why aunt and uncle relationships are so special, and ultimately why they're so overlooked in children's literature. Finally, if you're one of our Slate Plus listeners, we're going to do a feed follow, where we share some social media accounts we're really loving right now and who we think might brighten up your feed. Here's what you'll hear if you have Slate Plus.
I have one for Jamilah that I think it came up, your phone's always listening. I had my phone in here when we were recording about all the board games and talking about them. They're called the Board Game Couple, and they're at games, then the number 4, and then TWO. They play a segment of the game on their reel so you can see it and be like, oh yeah, this is something we would play, or this is something we would not play.
Not only will you get to hear that fun segment, but as a Slate Plus member, you'll get a whole bonus segment every week. Plus, you get to listen to all your favorite Slate podcasts ad-free. It's truly the best way to listen and the best way to support the show. You can sign up for Slate Plus now at slate.com/momanddadplus. All right, we're going to jump into triumphs and fails as soon as we get back from this short break.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverage you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies, all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at Progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Is it just me, or have you ever had to bail on an event because you're so bloated your clothes don't fit? Well, Ritual created Symbiotic Plus with that weird gut stuff in mind. It contains clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. I've been taking Symbiotic Plus for a few months now, and I am no longer hiding from my clothes. Symbiotic Plus is a daily 3-in-1 prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic with 2 of the world's most clinically studied probiotic strains to support the relief of mild and occasional bloating, gas, and diarrhea. Why include a postbiotic? Well, it provides fuel to the cells that make up the gut lining and supports a healthy gut barrier. Win-win. Symbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. There's no more shame in your gut game. That's why Ritual is offering Mom and Dad listeners 30% off your first month. Visit ritual.com/momanddad to start Ritual or add Symbiotic Plus to your subscription today.
Hey guys, so Jamilah, what have you been up to this week?
Last week, I had an event. I appeared on a live taping of a podcast, Tanya Mosley's Truth Be Told for NPR. And it was really nice. The event happened. It was in the evening in Pasadena, which is a nice little drive from our house. And it was on a night that I had Naima, so I had to bring her with me. And this is the sort of thing we used to do all the time. I'd have an event. We'd put on cute dresses. We'd go together. We'd be cute together, you know, mommy-daughter thing. And I went to pick her up from after school, and I had a dress in the bag. And it was a dress I bought a while ago. And when I bought it, I asked her, do you like this? And she was like, yeah. But when I presented the dress to her, she was like, oh, no, I hate this. She was like, when did you buy this? And I was like, a while ago. She was like, that's when I was still lying to you. Because Naima doesn't like most of the clothes I pick out for her anymore. She's no longer into being my cute, pretty little princess. She barely likes wearing dresses, which breaks my heart. I mean, she has some dresses she likes, but in general, she's just not a dress girl anymore. And so she begrudgingly puts this dress on. She's so miserable. Gets to the event, eats some chicken wings, destroys the dress.
What do you mean
ate
destroys
some chicken wings. She ate some buffalo wings.
Okay, so she's not like tearing it.
She just got sauce
on
all
it.
over it.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I feel sad. Like, I miss the days where we could put on pink dresses together, you know, and be adorable and bask in that attention. And she loved it and I loved it. You know, and that's not who she is anymore. She's more comfortable in a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt. You know, she's not my pretty little princess anymore.
That's definitely a transition.
I don't know that like this preteen age is their permanent selves.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like
a
lot of this, because I just see so much of this with Henry too. This like, I just need to be against this because you're for this. And this is a way for me to be separate. I don't know. I just get the attitude about, like I was saying before the show, I called a, get together with his friends a play date. And then he's like, well, I'm not interested in a play date. Like we hang out, like all this attitude. It's like, but I'm doing the thing you want. Who cares what I called it, right? But it is it's like all of those opportunities to have that independence are a big deal. So this is one more, of those. It doesn't feel good. I feel like as the mom, it's the worst.
It's the absolute worst. It's so uncomfortable.
What about you, Elizabeth?
My
Are you
life
fluent?
here continues to be just kind of a hot mess, but it's okay. We still don't have our things, which I think is adding to sort of this like chaos that we are in as a family. So, going to school, which we haven't done in a long time, is just a whole nother thing. Like to get everybody out of the house. Teddy is definitely, we're 3 weeks into school now, is in that like in the morning, he doesn't really want to go, right? Who wants to get up and go to school? Then he doesn't, when he gets home, he's so exhausted. And we have this train ride home, although with him, Jeff's been trying to pick them up by car just because it takes away 10 minutes of the trip home. Teddy's teacher is really great about checking in with us, but almost every day, I get an email that's like, hey, Teddy, he doesn't want to finish his coloring. We're really focusing on coloring here. He has expressed to me that he doesn't really like it. He doesn't see the value in it. But we had a nice chat and he went on his way, which is, such a reaction to homeschool because since he didn't like to color, I was sort of like, coloring is not the hill to die on. Yeah, he does his handwriting practice. He just really prefers line drawing. And if I ask him to add more detail, he's happy to do that, right? But for this teacher, the coloring is important for whatever reason. And Teddy and I have talked about that. But I think making all these switches at once, particularly for him, is just really tough. And he's always been my toughest child in this sense, in the sense of like, he's very strong-willed. And if he doesn't want to do something, so I've been trying to just be like, I really love that you expressed to your teacher why, you didn't want to color. Because I do think that's valuable for him to say, but I've added all these details in pen. I just don't want to make this colorful, right? But I also am sort of like, but you're in this school and they believe that coloring is part of the like assignment. And so as a result, we're going to have to color. He did, I guess as a small victory, last night just before bed, decide I'm just going to be so good at coloring and do so much coloring that they tell me to stop coloring. So I'm like, okay. I'm not sure that's the way we want to go, but so I've, typically in these moves, a lot of this is handled because they're homeschooling, and so I can adjust to these things, give us more time when we need it to be settling in, impose some more like structure in the places we need it. And I just feel very like hands tied because we don't have the things that we would normally have to keep us organized and keep us in a routine. We don't have, I don't have as much flexibility with their school schedule. So I'm just kind of riding out this path that is long. And, each day it's like, okay, maybe today we'll kind of nail down how the morning goes or the afternoon goes. Just a lot of little fails along the way, but it's all part of the process, I think. It's just a big change, but
big time.
Yeah. Zach, how was your week?
So last I left off, I had dropped Noah off for her first day of kindergarten after we took the red eye home from California. So she was pretty emotional the morning of her first day of school, but she walked into school with all the other kids and we just had our fingers crossed and we're hoping for the best. You guys, she loves school.
Yay.
She loves it. She is so into it that she gets a little violent and upset when we pick her up. She doesn't want to leave. She loves it. She says she loves recess and lunch, but she says she's learning so much that she can't even remember it. So it's hard to get details. We have a schedule from her teacher of what they're actually doing. They're working on phonics and some math, and she's been very excited to start learning how to read, and she's getting that there. And one thing that's cool about this school, it's a K through 8, and she eats lunch and goes to recess with not just her fellow kindergartners, but also first and second graders. And she loves older kid vibes. And so she's excited to be hanging out with 7 and 8 year olds. And who knows what the future holds, but ideally she'll be at the school as long as, she continues to like it and the school is as good as it feels now. She'll be there through 8th grade, and then Ami will be there. So it's conceivable that we are just at the beginning of a 10-year relationship with this place, which is really special just to think about the ways in which we are going to be able to dig in as, members of the parent community. This is a feeling that I have been waiting for, this kind of feeling of okay, this is where we're going to, plant seeds and see what comes of them. So we're 1 week in, but so far she wants to wear her school t-shirt every day. She's not giving us shit in the morning. Ami, on the other hand, is still a challenge in the morning, but that's a fail for another day. So, but for now we're super thrilled with how it's going.
I went to the same school from 1st through 8th grade, and I think that is such a special experience. I had the opportunity to transfer out and go to a special accelerated program at the high school I ended up going to for 7th and 8th grade. And it was a big choice. Wow. It was really prestigious. And I ended up staying because it just meant so much to me to complete those last 2 years at this place where I'd been, for so long. I think there's really something to be said for a K to 8 or a 1 to 8, experience that you really, I don't know. I love my elementary school in the way that I love my high school or my college, maybe even more than high school.
Are you in touch with anyone from those days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My oldest friends are from elementary school.
Yeah. Love it. And on that note, we're going to take another quick break, and we'll see you back here for a Jake Gyllenhaal interview.
Wait, are you gaming? On a Chromebook?
Yep. It's got a high-res 120Hz display, plus this killer RGB keyboard. And I can access thousands of games anytime, anywhere.
Stop playing.
What?
Get out of here.
Huh?
Yeah, I want you to stop playing and get out of here so I can game on that Chromebook.
Got it.
Discover the ultimate cloud gaming machine, a new kind of Chromebook. Hey everybody, it's Tim Heidecker. You know me, Tim and Eric, Bridesmaids, and Fantastic Four. I'd like to personally invite you to listen to Office Hours Live with me and my co-hosts, DJ Doug Pound.
Hello.
And Vic Berger.
Howdy.
Every week we bring you laughs, fun, games, and lots of other surprises. It's live. We take your Zoom calls.
Music.
We love having fun. Excuse me?
Songs. Vic said something.
Songs.
Music.
I like having fun. I like to laugh. I like to meet people who can make me laugh. Please subscribe now.
Okay, we're back. And I'm sure a lot of you recognize the name Jake Gyllenhaal. He has been in so many great movies, and we're not going to talk about any of them today because of the ongoing WGA strike. However, Jake Gyllenhaal is now an author. He and his longtime friend, Greta Caruso, have written a book. It's called The Secret Society of Aunts and Uncles. It's a children's book. It's delightful. And we're going to talk all about it along with the illustrator of that book, the very talented Caldecott medalist, Dan Santat. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so Greta, can you describe a vivid memory you have of one of your aunts practicing peak auntiology, or an uncle being like the greatest uncleologist you could imagine?
Yes, and thank you so much for using the correct terminology there.
I've studied.
It's actually autistry is also a version of it, just in case you want to use it. My aunt Nancy, to whom I dedicated the book, she continues to be really amazing, and would let me have Coke, which is peak autistry.
Coca-Cola.
But to my parents, they're the same things. Honestly, they're real like health food Ellie in the 90s types.
Coca-Cola.
Really important. She one time picked me up from a piano lesson that she had sat in on. And I have really wonderful parents, and they were very supportive and told me I was really good at piano. But the truth was I just didn't care about it, and I didn't practice it basically ever. Mm-hmm. And after the piano lesson, Nancy was driving me home, and I turned to her and I was like, pretty good, huh? And she looked at me and she was like, you're just not that good at piano. And I was totally shocked by it, but that has come up so much when we were writing this book, because she was just straight with me in a way that parents can't really be. But it was a moment where I really realized that I could trust her in a pretty profound way. And also it was really funny to tell like a 9-year-old that they're bad at piano, but I needed to hear it. I really was.
But also your parents were they like, oh, you're amazing.
Yeah, they were doing that parent thing.
It's amazing.
Incredible.
You
and
look
it
like
wasn't.
Me, you sound like me, you play piano like me. Terrible.
Exactly.
And who do you become if you don't have that truth-telling aunt or uncle, right? Like, it totally changes the trajectory of who you become.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need someone.
It's true.
You need a Nancy. I have an Aunt Nancy, too. And I feel like a lot of people have Aunt Nancys. Do you find a lot of other Aunt Nancys in your orbit?
I don't.
I don't think there are enough Aunt Nancys in the world, but I do think, aunts and uncles, they don't need to be blood relatives, but I do think most people have in their childhood. It could be a teacher, it could be a coach, it could be someone that was an adult figure that was honest with them about things, maybe talked to them about things that they weren't getting at home. And I just think it is essential.
Yeah. What about you, Jake? You didn't have the truth teller, but what did you have? Give me some aunt or uncle canonical moments.
I had definitely had truth tellers. I mean, but I would say for me, my uncle Max, like he was always so playful, and like I think he always showed me like how to have fun. He was goofy, and like sometimes I'd be like pretty serious kid, but I'm actually not that serious at all. I think he really showed me that I come from a family of like they make very dramatic movies and stories and stuff, and he was like, eh. And I caught a shark with my Uncle Bob once.
An actual shark.
Yeah, we caught a shark. No, he had a boat. My Uncle Bob had a sailboat. He sailed all the time, and that was like we spent a lot of time on a sailboat. And but yeah, we caught a shark on a boat, and he was like, "We caught it. We reeled it in."
That's very cool.
Yeah, but I mean, that's I mean, I guess that's the form of truth telling, right? Catching a shark, right?
Catching a shark, catching a big fish.
Yeah,
an actual big fish.
Yeah,
but it's interesting what you're saying about your uncle. Kind of like helping to find an equilibrium between perhaps like the seriousness of your parents' world and Greta, like the seriousness of Coke being, prohibited. Like aunts and uncles are really good at showing you that there is another way, but not.
Yeah,
they occupy a space, like a very, very unique space where, parents have this unconditional love that I think also blinds them. And I think that blind spot is like right where the aunt and uncle fit, where you can still fit in the world of love, but, you can also say, you can go do this, take this risk, it's okay. It's not going to harm you. It might actually help grow you. I think that's the necessary kind of angle that the aunt and uncle should sit at, is kind of knowing their sibling and knowing the strengths and weaknesses of them, and helping them parent in those spaces that they may be a bit afraid of. Like, that's the best version of the aunt and uncle.
Totally. Dan, have you worked on any aunt and uncle literature before?
No, actually, it's very uncommon. It's typically about like a grandmother, a grandfather, parent, pet dog, things like that. But it's not. You might have an aunt or uncle on the periphery, just kind of adding color to the story, but never centralized on an aunt and uncle. So I think that's I think it's fascinating that this script came about.
I'm curious though. So since like you haven't worked with an aunt and uncle that have kind of taken center stage before, how did you think about personifying these characters with your illustrations?
So my parents are expats. They came to America from Thailand. I might bring this room down a little bit. So I never really got to meet my aunts and uncles. I've only gotten the opportunity once. And I remember there was this one moment where I found out that my uncle, my mom's younger brother, he was a cop. He was a cop in Thailand. And I remember it was like this one moment where I see his police ID, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, wow, that's fascinating, and then he removes the badge, and then he takes his revolver. He takes this big revolver out of the box, right? And he holds it up and he's like, yeah, this is in Thai. And I can only speak like a 5-year-old, right? And he's holding this revolver in his hand. He looks at me, he's like, yeah, here's my gun. And I'm like, yes. And he says, you want to hold it? And I'm just like looking around, thinking, what is my mom going to think? What's my mom going to think that her brother is like handing this gun? And I'm looking over and he says, it's okay. It's not loaded. And I say, yes. He hands me the revolver and I'm holding it. It's like the first time I ever held a gun. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is freaky. And then I hear my mom come in and he just yanks the gun out of my hand. He yanks the gun out of my hand and tucks it away. And he winks at me. And I'm like, oh, we weren't supposed to do this. This was awesome. And I kind of just translated that later on, like in life, where when I eventually became an uncle to my wife's sister's kids, I have 2 nieces. And I remember I had this, at the time, I think my niece Anya, she was, oh gosh, maybe really young, like 3 years old. And I went to their house and they had this weird relationship with their neighbors where the doors were just open and people could just walk in and out as they pleased. And I was just thinking to myself, like, is it cool to just like let people go in and out here, And my niece, 3 years old, just starts walking into the house. And I'm like, Anya, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think you can just walk into somebody's house. And there was this phrase that she had just learned, and she knew it was bad because I remember when she said it to me, she was so ashamed. She couldn't even make eye contact with me. She's staring at the ground because she's so disgusted about what she's about to say, but she's saying it to me. And she says, Uncle Dan, what the hell's your problem? And I was just like, okay, I guess I'll just let you walk in the house. And she just walks into the house and she comes out maybe like 5 minutes later. I'm just standing there. I didn't want to go into the house and say like, hi, I'm Uncle Dan. I'm Asian, but she's white. So I have to explain this whole thing. And she comes out and then she like gives me a high five. She's like, thanks for covering. It's like, what? How did you even know that phrase for me? And so that's
where
like
you're coming from. Wow. You two are old friends, Jake and Greta, and I'm curious what kinds of conversations you were having that led to this idea of let's write a children's book about aunts and uncles.
Well, at first, we started this book like during the Lincoln administration a while ago. And so at first we talked a lot about the books that we loved when we were kids. And then we talked a lot about the kind of children's book we felt like we were in a position to write at that point in our lives. And I think it's a relationship, this aunt, uncle, niece, nephew relationship, one that we've talked a lot about and one that has served us both in really different ways. And it's one that's, been totally forgotten by children's literature, as Dan said, and really is its own thing that requires a kind of different sort of treatment. When we started, I was just a niece, and now I'm an aunt twice over and a mom. So we've added some new people to the mix, but I think that was the initial thing that kind of inspired the idea.
Do you have theories about why aunts and uncles have been overlooked?
Just injustice.
General injustice.
I think it's interesting in that, like, I don't think it's commonly thought of as a significant relationship, in that there are so many stories about siblings, relationship with siblings is biblical, right?
Yep.
And yet kind of the offshoot of that is aunting and uncling, But I just think it's probably, we're more inclined towards stories that seem like big gestures. And the essence of this story is that the small gesture is sometimes, particularly for a child, like a huge gesture. Those little things we remember. It's why when I remember reading children's books as a kid, it's the small things that I'd pass over and then find again on the 10th read, that I fell in love with books as a result of that. That's why Dan's illustrations are so extraordinary, because filled with wonderful detail and Easter eggs, and he gets to know his authors, and he is so deeply involved in the storytelling process and was with us. And so, I think it's the small things that have the most significance and yet are oftentimes overlooked. So it's not surprising to me that relationship, which I've discovered with my nieces, it's easy to say, but harder to do, to say, like, I'm just going to sit and ask you how you are and see you. And that's going to define our relationship. And that's what the book is about, is just the nephew, Leo in this case, but it can be a niece too, like just defining what an aunt or an uncle is. And that's what the idea is. And it's just like, I remember becoming an uncle and being like, whoa, like I'm Uncle Jake now, like forever.
It's a big deal.
It's like put it on my CV, man. Like that's to me better than any award,
Yeah, that's sweet. I have to be honest, I've thought to myself over the years, especially now that I have kids and I read a lot of children's books, I've thought to myself, like, it can't be that hard to write a children's book. But I haven't done it. And so what were you surprised to be like, oh no, I was totally wrong. Like this certain thing.
That
interesting.
Silly idea.
It's called hubris, my friend. And
oh yeah.
That's us all.
Hubris and chutzpah.
Yes, we were quite arrogant. We were like secret society aunts and uncles. Boom. Perfect.
Book
done.
700 years later.
Yeah.
Ramon is actually 75 years old now.
Yeah. Truly. It was really hard. It's really, not to be too simplistic about it, it's really hard because it's so few words. And so you had the opportunity to just write as much as you wanted. It would really cover for a lot of fat in the story. And because you're not able to do that, there can't be like one superfluous word. It just took us forever. And I think really the huge missing piece in the process for us was Dan and his illustrations, that we were like circling around this idea and we had these characters and we kind of knew the shape of things, but we just didn't know how that kind of amorphous idea was going to become a children's book. And then when we met Dan and he sketched out these two characters, it really just brought it to life almost instantaneously.
Yeah, I felt like I was in an editing room and shooting a movie at the same time. It was so fun. It was like, sometimes I felt like we were doing like a cold reading. Do you know what I mean, Dan? Like when we'd be working together and I'd be like when they give you a script and you're just like, okay, bring out all the tools you've used for the years. And Dan was doing that with the illustrations. And it was just so inspiring.
It was like, I remember mentioning that it felt like we were in an editing room, where you would look at something and tighten up a scene. I will say this, because when the manuscript first came to me, gosh, if I recall, I think the manuscript was sitting somewhere at like 62 pages. And typically picture books are 32 to 40 pages. And the one thing that I really have to give credit to Jake and Greta about is that, I've sometimes worked with other celebrities and, they'll be insistent that, it has to be this way. and then you kind of have to conform to what they want. But, they were both so amazing in the process of just kind of letting go of the steering wheel and saying, this isn't our realm. This isn't what we're comfortable with. I remember Jake specifically saying, I know story, I just don't know children's books. So I need to understand. I need your help. And he just gave me the manuscript and he said, please make this better. And I have never seen two people learn so quickly, because I've worked with some very well-known authors who insist that their words be, precious. And here I was watching Jake and Greta just slice and dice away to the point where we actually got it down to 34.
I mean, I think that's the process
pages?
of, like, in movies in particular, that's the process of it, right? Like, as you shape something, you have to be a visual. It is a visual medium. So you have to be aware of the literal and the visual. You have to be aware of the visual. You have to know that there's a structural story that needs to be told. But, like, there are things that can be told in behavior. As a performer in particular, you can say, I don't need to say that, I can communicate that. But you can only know you can communicate that if you're aware and connected to the narrative, right? It's not just thinking about character and your character where they're at. I'm an actor who's thinking about story first and plugging my character into the story. So you have to be aware of the backbone. And it's the same thing with this process. Was when you have someone with Dan's expertise, what you can do is you can say, I've always dreamed of a 3-word page, right? Like, I don't want anything more than 3 words. I can visualize that's what I want, but there are 15 words here. And it's annoying me that it's taking us 15 words to say this. And then Dan goes, well, I drew this. And then I go, oh, okay, well, that means we can take out 4 words. Okay, now we're still left. We still have 9 words, and we need to get rid of, at the most, we need 6 more to go. Can we do it? And then we take out this word, it doesn't work. But then he adds, that inspires and write that, draw that illustration. And then that was how it worked. And
that sounds really fun.
It was so fun.
And I feel like the moment where we were just high on cutting pages and cutting text.
Oh, yeah.
And then there were a few little things in the end that we either added back in or added that we hadn't had in there. And they were so meaningful. It felt like such a surgical kind of addition.
That's fun. That's awesome.
The word
really
choice
great.
towards the end, particularly as Dan was saying, the emotional spots, like when he talks the rubber band and stuff, like you really do see when you talk about, when the best authors, the ones I love so much, like, when they talk about structuring and restructuring a sentence, sometimes things flow and they don't even remember what they wrote. And then sometimes they stick for like weeks on a sentence, because the choice is so dire between an and and an and an you know what I mean? And I felt the pressure of putting that into print, and we did too, where there was like a freedom, and then it starts to narrow, and you're like, oh God,
Yeah.
But it was really a magical process in the end, and like a wonderful, like I reached out to Dan, like I just DM'd him because like I love his work and I thought it was a long shot. I was just like, yo, we love your work. Like, would you ever be interested? And I was just like, oh yeah, hey, cool, what's up? Sure. And I was like, what the,
Thank God.
Yeah, but it was so cool. It was like our instincts had led us to him, right? And then I think it was right. Our instincts matched up. Like, there was a reason why I reached out to him.
That was Jake Gyllenhaal, Greta Caruso, and Dan Santat talking about their new book, The Secret Society of Aunts and Uncles. And that's our show. Please reach out to us with your questions or topics you want us to cover at momanddad@slate.com, or leave us a voicemail. We love getting voicemails. We love hearing your voice. 646-357-9318. That's 646-357-9318. You can also subscribe to our show, leave us a rating and friendly review, and tell your friends. Thank you so much. This episode of Mom and Dad Are Fighting is produced by Rosemary Belson and Maura Currie. Alicia Montgomery is VP of Slate Audio. For Elizabeth Newcamp and Jamilah Lemieux, I'm Zach Rosen. Thanks for listening.